Greeny. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. It's good to talk. And before we get to the business there, I'd like to talk to you about what's going on in college football right now. And anyone who follows Jay on Twitter and other places knows that you are one of the most insightful and interesting opinionists when it comes to all things that involve the concepts of amateurism and the NCAA and all the rest of it. And so the question I asked here just a moment ago, I'd like to ask to you is, in your mind, if the Big 12, the ACC, and the SEC are able to complete a football season and play a championship and it all comes together reasonably well, would it automatically be true that the Big 10 and Pac-12 made the wrong decision?
No, that's a really good question. I think to unreasonable people that don't want to look at the entire picture, they may be able to, use that one thing and say, because the SEC and the rest were able to cobble together a season, therefore the Big Ten and the Pac-12 and all the other smaller conferences were wrong. And they're all making different decisions. It's not all the same data. And I'm not sure the Pac-12, no matter what the protocols were, could pull this off simply because of the area of the country where they are, that the spread and transmission rates are so high in California and Arizona that it may not be feasible throughout the course of the football season. I mean, my understanding right now, and look, I've not been looking at this state by state, but that USC, UCLA, Stanford, and Cal can't even practice. Even if they could go forward, decided to go forward to the season, they'd have part of their league couldn't even practice. And so it made it difficult. And I feel badly for everybody involved. But, we could be looking – but there are two things on it. We could be looking back and saying that Kevin Warren and Larry Scott were ahead of the curve and made the right decision in advance of everybody else. But if the SEC, Big 12, ACC, God forbid, have some sort of catastrophe, then they're going to have to answer for that. And that's, I think, what a lot of people are really worried about.
The other question I have is, assuming the other conferences do play, and I'm going to talk to David Shaw from Stanford in just a moment here, do you believe that the players in the Big Ten and the Pac-12 should be allowed to transfer right now without hardship if there are places that are interested in bringing them in?
Not to play this year. It's a very unfortunate circumstance that you have a number of players that will not be able to play. But there's certain aspects of this that just can't be helped. It's like, you don't want to make this too simplistic, but it's like if you have a canceled flight, you just don't kick everybody off the next flight just because the first flight got canceled and pile them into the next plane. That's a real problem for other players that have made commitments to play, and all of a sudden they're going to have players piled on top of them. And so I don't think that's a feasible, workable solution. There are tons of contradictions in this, and the Division I Council, I think, ruled yesterday that no matter how many competitions you have this year, they're not going to count them, that kind of thing against your eligibility, which starts to pile players up in future years. And so it's difficult for incoming players that didn't think they were going to have to deal with certain players coming back. So there are a lot of problems that this is going to cause, and everybody's going to have to adjust.
I think you're right. And I've said this so many times now, sometimes I worry that I'm repeating myself, but I think it bears saying once more, in a pandemic, there are just more questions than there are answers. And that's one thing that we've all figured out, I think, since March, and that continues to be the case here. Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.